The Rail Coal-Fired Bistro is committed to offering top-quality menu selections for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, including an after-hours menu. The Rail Coal-Fired Bistro, located on Highway 138 in Kahnawake.
Sego Sewagwego, and welcome to our program FNTV 360. I'm one of your hosts, Regan Jacobs.
And I'm Sergio Pavone. Glad to be here today.
I know it's been a while, but we have a lot happening on our show. Of course, we're broadcasting here out of Kahnawake Mohawk territory, right near Montreal, for our viewers who aren't familiar with the Quebec region. But we are a Mohawk community right next to Montreal, like 5 minutes. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump away. And of course, welcome back to all of our viewers who are following First Nations TV and supporting us. It's great. We're growing.
That's right.
So lots to talk about on today's show, lots going on here in Kahnawake, and of course we focus on news that is coming out of this community and other Haudenosaunee communities, and also we look at the Quebec region and how First Nations issues are impacting the region here in Quebec, Ontario, United States, because we are bordering all of these other communities, including Akwesasne, Kanesadake, so our geography is like...
Yeah, and we also include stories that touch people from outside the Native communities, which is important, because what's going on outside impacts most of the time what's going on in the Native communities, and vice versa. So it's interesting for everybody.
They always cover us.
Yeah.
So if we have things happening like in Chateauguay, the neighboring communities in Montreal, we're going to cover it. Even if it's a little story, and we're like, we know it's our viewers are going to be interested. So, well. And Indigenous issues all over the country are happening, so we, understand that people out in BC may not be able to relate to a particular story, but they can relate to a particular issue. And one of the big issues that we're going to be covering on the show today is our membership here in Kahnawake, and adoption and identity issues. We're also going to be discussing K103 board elections and some of the controversy that has come up in the community regarding the board and administration at our local radio station. We're going to be looking at economic development, and also Carey Price, yes, the Habs Montreal goalie, the beloved goalie. I'm a Habs fan, so I'm a little one-sided here. But he showed up at Kahnawake Survival School this week to pay tribute to some students for a local program, a donation program that is sponsored by Eventco. Pretty big. Yeah. It was like a big donation.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and hats off to Carey Price for getting involved in First Nations. Of course, he is from First Nation out in BC, and it's great to see him getting involved with kids.
Yeah, he has some Indigenous background, of course, and he does talk about that, and you're going to see that later on in the show. But first up, really quickly, I just wanted to talk about Sergio. I know that some people had questioned, why is Sergio on the show? He's not Indigenous. But actually, Sergio, and you can speak for this to yourself, you have had a long history here with Kahnawake, but also starting back to your school years where you had, looked at, I don't know if you majored in Indigenous affairs, but it's been a long time that you've been involved with First Nations issues.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've been a neighbor of Kahnawake since the age of 9, and I had friends, still have friends, many friends in Kahnawake, and I learned about the reality of First Nations, and I recall my first reaction, the one that gave me emotions, was when I was very, very young, 7 years old, I believe I was, and I was watching the TV in black and white in those days. And
your age is showing.
There was the issues that were going on at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and when Leonard Peltier was involved. So it started way back when, these vibrations, and when I went to university and did all my schooling, I always had a particular interest on, say we had a subject which was Quebec politics, well, I would study Quebec politics in regards of First Nations. So that way it was developed, and I developed a passion for understanding my neighbors, which are, Mohawks from Ganawagi.
Right. So, I mean, you know, it's not out of the ordinary for a host, especially in broadcasting, for us to look, you know, in the community, but then also outside of the community. And the whole really point of First Nations TV 360, our show, is to look at the politics and the social politics. So we definitely wanted somebody who was well versed, but also because we're looking at a regional and a national level, we also wanted to bring somebody on board who had that background in politics, who understands, you know, First Nations issues, the neighboring communities, things like that. So we think you're a great choice, and we love him. So he's not going anywhere. All right. So first up, we're going to talk about a recent policy, or a recent adoption that was new to, well, not new, but it was an additive to the Ganawagi membership law. So about 2-3 weeks ago, there was a meeting that was held, a special membership meeting, where this issue of adoption was discussed and was actually formalized at that meeting of about 20 people or so. And that's another sticking point for a lot of people that are talking about, you know, that are launching concerns over this, is the number of people who are actually taking part in the membership meetings. But aside from that, the criteria now was that if a family adopts a non-Indigenous child, a non-First Nations child, and they raise that child to the age of 18, that child, once they are 18 years of age, they will no longer be able to live here. They will not be able to apply for membership under the Ganawagi membership law. So that raised a lot of concern, because now it seems like we're going above what, you know, even some of our own Haudenosaunee traditions.
Well, I think on an administrative perspective, I mean, if you put the emotions in there, of course, then you get outraged and you start, you know, criticizing a lot. But if you look at it at an administrative point of view, we have to understand what the basis of this is. It's not a question of wanting to exclude or include people on arbitrary basis. It's about, you know, being recognized legally by other bodies of government to have a right to occupy, live, and prosper on a given territory.
Right.
Given the fact that Ganawagi's history with the Sault Ste. Louis issue, well, you know, going all the way back to the king's signature, the King of France at the time, saying that you know, the Mohawks could occupy the land as long as they live and prosper there. So, but there, it's specified that it's the Mohawks. So if you dilute that, somewhere along the line, you may lose that right, and that means not only your right as a people, your language, your culture, the existence of the nation itself. So it's a very hard debate. It's very hard to say you're for or against if you look at it, you know, purely on an administrative perspective. At the same time, you know, many societies live with this kind of dilemma on language. For example, Quebec is a very good example with Law 101, which people would say, how can you be, you know, so radical with, you know, how I should express myself, even on business, you know, businesses and signs and so on. And if you go to Florida, there's the same issue with Spanish. They want English to be the major language when, you know, most of the people speak Spanish. So there are a lot of examples like this in nations across the world. Of course, language is not like, you know, getting somebody in adoption, but of course it raises serious questions, and this is something that I fear will never really be resolved. Okay,
so, you know, and you make a good point. It's maybe taking a lot of time to be resolved, and like 4 or 5 decades now. But for real, it's something that has been an ongoing, you know, since the 70s. Membership will flare up, and then people get complacent and they realize, oh, this is an issue that we really have to deal with. But I would say consistently over the last few years it has been an issue. So one of the things that the Mohawk Council has come out strong in saying is that the spokesperson for the Mohawk Council of Ganawagi, who always makes a lot of statements on behalf of the MCK, is Joe Delarone, and he says, well, we have to stand our ground. you have to understand it's not about trying to be exclusionary. It's so that the doors aren't thrown so wide open that we end up like other Native communities that have lost their identity. And you know, on the back end of that, there's also a community member who came out saying, well, it's very sensitive, it's personal, it's in our homes that we are affected by this, it's even in the ones that aren't personally affected, but just from a human point of view, I don't know what the answer is. But I can tell you that throwing away these children and throwing away their own members is not the answer. So, you know, there's also people who are saying that we are trying to do the right thing. We are trying to sustain our membership. We are trying to sustain our bloodlines. You can definitely see the two point of views that are emerging and are strong. But I haven't, you know, and this is just personal again, from not a personal point of view, a professional point of view, from living in this community and covering this story over the last few years, you do see the side that is for the membership and for regulations coming out a lot stronger.
Yeah.
So,
well, people don't want to disappear. There's this, I'm really not a fervent supporter of nationalism in any form, and but nationalism does that. It brings out sentiments. It brings out emotions. This desire to stay alive as a culture, and as much as I understand it, when I put it in perspective, in history's perspective, I mean, what is, you know, being Mohawk? What is being a Quebecer? What is being Canadian? What is being an American? We see it today with the Donald Trump issue. Who identifies with him? Is that being an American? Or, so these are fundamental things that fall into the subjective world, and it's hard to administer, and we want to make a law around it. That's it's going to flare, you know, a lot of passions. And I mean, there's many things that we culturally identify to as nations or as cultures, and then we realize that we've been tainted, First Nations with different religions coming from outside of Turtle Island and so on. So, what is who we are, and that's it brings us too close to that debate, and then we fall back to what is in front of us, which is it becomes administration,
right? And
that's easily criticizable.
Well, and the thing, like you make a lot of good points there. The issue itself is far from being over. I mean, even though these types of legislation or law, if you will, are going through the process of the community decision-making process here in Kahnawake, there is still a lot of legal aspects that remain unresolved. I mean, I know that this issue is before the courts. There are several community members who had taken action against the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake and the membership law for different reasons. And also the whole issue has drawn the attention of the Human Rights Commission and those advocates that say that the law criminalizes the community and the compassion in the community. So we would like to hear your feedback on this. You can always partake in our Facebook page at First Nations TV, and also or send us an email at info@firstnationstv.com and let us know your thoughts, and we'll discuss it on the next show. Yeah. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, but before we do, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, because our show is powered in part by Dr. Nguyen Dental Clinic and Solution Ford. We also have DeCastros Automobile.
That's right.
And the rail.
Yeah.
So we are very thankful for our sponsors and for supporting First Nations TV and our broadcasting and media. So don't go away. We're going to be back with more on this show, and stay tuned.
Solution Ford is more than just vehicles. It's an experience. Like any good dealership, we carry a wide variety of vehicles to suit your needs and budget. Come test out the new Ford F-150, Mustang, or any other vehicles on our lot that catches your eye. Come into Solution Ford today, and our experienced sales team will take good care of you.
Well, welcome back to 360 Kahnawake, and we're going to continue the show with more topics today.
Yes. All right. So up next, we have the K103 radio board issue. Let me just go through my notes here very quickly. Okay. So allegations of election of tampering by K103 board of directors and the administration at the station. This story actually broke in the Eastern Door, but we had been following it for quite some time since last week. week, and there were several issues that happened to really bring this story to light. First, there was a number of social media posts on Facebook from former employees from K103 that alleged that they were being blocked from being nominated or running in the K103 board elections, which is coming up.
Yeah, and so we don't know yet.
We don't know if they're actually going to be disqualified.
That's right.
But in a timely manner, the K103 board electoral officer resigned the day before, which which came under scrutiny. Why did he resign? Well, he did say in a letter to the K103 board of directors, which was confirmed by Darryl Leclerc, the board chairman, that he resigned for personal reasons, and that was it. He wouldn't give anything else, and he doesn't want to discuss it, so we're just leaving that alone. All right, so we're going to move on. Now, what ended up happening was the seat that is up for re-election is former board of directors member Jeremy White. Yep. Now, Jeremy White is from Kahnawake. He also works at 92.5 FM in Montreal. It's a major radio station, a major radio market. So he ended up resigning in January of 2016. Now, White has come out saying that the reasons for his resignation, which also came out on Facebook, but I did speak with him earlier in the week before we are taping, obviously, and had a great deal of conversation with Jeremy regarding why he left the station. And some of the things that he is alleging is that the station is broken, that the board has been unsuccessful, that they haven't done much in their tenure, that the station is in a financial crisis. He's alleging that one of the main reasons why he resigned because there was an altercation between himself and the chairman of the board, Darryl Leclerc, who at a January 20th meeting, I believe, there was some words being thrown back and forth, and that things got very heated, and Darryl had to leave the room, and so he's alleging that things got out of hand and perhaps physical. Yeah. But in the local newspaper, Leclerc says that this didn't happen, and the board is corroborating his story. Yep. They do say that yes, things did get heated, and there was also an email that had followed up a few days later from one of the board members saying that they didn't feel that he should be removed, but that his position should be reevaluated.
Still some vague interpretations
very vague.
There.
Now, two of the former employees who are really at the front and center of this are Java James Jacobs and Lance DeLille. They are former employees and DJs at K103. Java was really the main catalyst to bringing this whole issue of board tampering to under the public eye, because he said that he had heard from Dwayne, the former electoral officer, that he was told to block them from running. We couldn't confirm that with Dwayne Kirby, because he really didn't want to talk about it, so we have to respect that, but they're alleging this. Now, I had a Facebook chat with the board of directors chairman, Darryl Leclerc, who said that that this is not true. They're not blocking them. So
it's hard to really
there's a lot going on. Yeah. I mean, we are obviously not taking a position. We're just bringing this story to light. It's really up to the public eye to make a decision. Yeah. I think that there is a lot going on here, but also when you look at the Constitution, or even some of the elements of how one gets elected to the board, there was this whole issue surrounding whether or not a community member is in good standing. Now, you had some issues with that too.
Well, because it opens a door to interpretation where, the person who's going to take a decision on whether or not someone is eligible, they have to understand, or they have to interpret this regulation, and they have to decide who is eligible or not, which is fundamentally not democratic. Just having this element in anything that has to do with elections, you're putting a bias, and you're putting a lot of pressure on people who have to take that decision. Right. You actually become the person who gives permission to someone to be able to run or not. That's a lot of political power. That takes away, in fact, the political power of the democratic process. So if I'm an elector and somebody else decides whether or not somebody is allowed or not to run, that's not my decision. So as a democracy or a democratic process,
yeah.
you lose out. It's a substitute, a non-democratic substitute to democracy. It's very questionable as a process. That's one thing. I'm not saying it's being used or whatever, but the fact that there's this element is really questionable. And my interpretation of this is like, it's a lot of emotionally anchored issues. Someone that seems to have anyways a lot of experience that comes into an administration board, and that I've read just like you, like the latest news, and apparently a few reports were deposited explaining how to readjust.
Jeremy did say that he had handed the board a report.
That's right.
Giving some recommendations on how the radio station could perform better. In my conversation with him, he talked about how he felt the programming was all over the place. Also, he made some good points about, if your morning show or your afternoon drive and different things like that. Now we're not in radio, we're in television, so we're just relaying this conversation. But if you were to have your host of the morning show going to the local McDonald's or the local Cafe Delight, why would people want to show up to go and see them? What type of personality are they where people would get out of bed and go to the local McDonald's or Cafe Delight to see your morning show host if they're not somebody of some sort of stature, which was his point. And I thought, okay, so and in this recommendation, this report is really what seems to be the catalyst to this argument that had happened at the January 20th meeting, where tempers flared, was that he felt that the board was just dismissive of the work that he had done. Only once that they had found out that one of these two former employees were helped make the report. So he's alleging that at the beginning it was great, but once they found out that there was a hand in it from one of the former employees, it wasn't so great after all. So I mean, I don't know,
that's why I think it seems to be emotionally anchored. And
I agree.
And I put myself also at the place of a administration board where and they mention it in the article that they're volunteers and they do the best they can, and here comes somebody who knows a little more probably about this medium and is telling them we should do this, we should do that, and it's one of their first meetings. I would myself be a little intimidated and saying, well, here he comes, the first meeting, and he's already telling us what we're doing wrong.
And that could be the case. There could be some uneasiness.
I can see how that creates frustrations and frictions. I think the important thing here is that the radio station comes out with a process that's not biased, and that the election process goes along, and that a new administration board or a new member joins the board, and that they start working positively, because it's important to the community to have some stability in that organization that gives information to the community.
And normally we don't report on things that are happening in other media. We like to be a media that obviously supports our fellow colleagues, and we wish everybody the best, and we hope that this situation works itself out. And so at this point, nominations will be taking place next week, so that would be March 31st. And I guess the story is going to continue to develop. Will they be able to be nominated and run? And what does the community have to say about this? I mean, at the end of the day, if they're able to be nominated and follow that process, because now there is a new electoral officer in place, Marcy DeLille, who's also a community member. And I guess she has a big decision to make, but if they are allowed to run, I mean, at the end of the day, is that what the community wants? Do they want these individuals or this person representing the K103 Board of Directors and representing the community at large? So moving on, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go away. You're watching FNTV 360 here with FirstNationsTelevision.com.
Solution Mazda, located in Chateauguay, Quebec, is the #1 destination to find that perfect vehicle for you at an unbeatable price. We have a wide variety of vehicles such as the CX-3 and the Mazda 2, 3, and other top models. Solution Mazda offering the best selection of new and used vehicles at an unbeatable price. Solution Mazda, we look forward to serving you.
And welcome back to the program. You're watching FNTV 360. I'm one of your hosts, Regan Jacobs.
And I'm Sergio Pavone.
And we're going to continue. So one of the big stories out of Kahnawake this week, of course, was that the Montreal Canadiens Habs goalie, Carey Price, visited the local high school, but we're not going to start with that. We're just giving you a teaser. Right. First, we're going to talk a little bit about economic development and where Kahnawake is at. We have a lot still happening here with Highway 30 and businesses that are up and coming. So I've noticed, and being from outside of Kahnawake, I hear and meet a lot of people and see what they say, and I consume here in Kahnawake. I go to the restaurants and use the different shops and services, and I see people from outside of Kahnawake more and more, and they talk to me, and I'm realizing that Kahnawake is now starting to prosper business-wise. It's really interesting. Yes. So I sent a little quick email. Of course, it was last-minute thing to Tewatani Zata, and they replied, saying, well, we don't have stats on consumers coming in and out of Kahnawake. They're not there yet, but certainly there are more and more businesses in Kahnawake. The issue is still that there's not enough people from Kahnawake consuming in Kahnawake yet, but of course not all the services are there. So I'm anticipating or predicting that will happen eventually. But it's really nice to see that people from outside of Kahnawake are now more and more present in the businesses, and that's really good because the link is being created, and there's a lot of myths that fall down. And people that come from as far away as Ormstown tell me, I went to Kahnawake, I went to have a meal and whatever, and that creates a real positive buzz, and that's what we need, I think, for creating good, positive, strong relations. I agree. I mean, I think that a lot of myths do fall away. If you look, between Kahnawake and just that stretch of highway out towards Chateauguay, you're saying, Robbie's, the rail, H2O. There's an ice cream shop, and then you have Highway Plaza 138 that is filled with businesses, and there's a lot more going on in this community than just contraband cigarettes. And that was one of the things I mentioned to you in our Facebook chat this week, was that this whole media that surrounds membership and cigarettes and anything that they can use to sensationalize the community to sell their story or paper, and that's no dig at my fellow journalists. It's just the approach to the journalism that I have a problem with, finding that fair and balanced story and not sensationalizing an entire community over issues that we feel are rightfully within our own jurisdiction and sovereignty to make a livelihood off of, whereas the government will come in and be like, well, it's contraband. It's all about money at the end of the day. Money for them, taxes that they're not getting. That's right. For us, it's about people, it's our livelihood, it's our community, it's prospering. I mean, does the rest of the country want to see, the First Nations in despair? Is that what they're used to seeing? Well, I think we're breaking the mold in some respect, that we are a community of really resilient individuals and smart people and who are going to prosper, and you're seeing it in all of our Haudenosaunee communities. Well,
I know you don't want to send negative waves or say negative comments, but my experience in analyzing political events, and also how the media treats these political events, naturally pushed me to analyze how and when the media treat First Nation issues. And here in Kahnawake, it's really clear, because I was very close to me. It's very clear that when there's no news, then they're looking for Mohawk news. They're looking to put that Mohawk warrior flag on the front page of. And I'm going to mention it. Journal de Montréal has been found guilty by the Conseil de Presse, the press council, of sensationalism and abusing that logos. Image. So when they talk about the Mohawks, right away they put the Warriors flag, and they don't make the distinction between council, Six Nations, and the Warriors. Same thing with the local media. I had to send in a letter to inform them numerous times at different local media outside of Kahnawake to say, hey, do you know what these symbols represent?
Right.
And when you use them, do you know? Because you wouldn't be putting the flag of the Patriots, not the football team, the Patriots of Quebec, the ones who created a mini revolution. And were hung. Would you put the Patriots flag when you're talking about the government statement, like Quebec government statement? No, you wouldn't.
No, exactly. They need to be educated that there is a way, and that to use those symbols, and that they have meaning to an entire nation of Indigenous people. So it's not, hey, let's put the warrior flag up when we're talking about contraband cigarettes. That is not okay with me.
Yeah.
You know, and when we're talking about land issues, or you want to know, you go to the experts and not just put something out. You know, it just leaves a bad taste in our mouths in terms of the integrity of those symbols.
Well, how many times as mayor they would ask, you know, they would call me for my comments on something that was going on in Kahnawake. For example, when the flags went up on the Mercier Bridge. And the first question I always asked was, did you do your background check? Do you know as a journalist what you're talking about? Or do you just want to have some sensational comment from a mayor that's shocked or whatever?
Right.
And they would say, well, what do you mean, did I do my background check? What do you know about the story? And I would say 99.9% of the time they had no clue what they were talking about.
It's just fast, right? Let's get something up. Anyways, I mean, see how quickly we can evolve into the opinion part of the show when we're discussing Indigenous issues. But I like that you come at this from that, you know, from experience. You're not just saying it to say it, so that's great. Okay, so we're gonna move on. There is a lot of economic development going on, and we're grateful as a community for all of our non-local neighbors and you know, surrounding communities that are supporting Kahnawake. So you know, it's a give and take situation. Okay, so moving on now to our big story. Carey Price was in Kahnawake this week, and he was part of an Eventco announcement that was a contribution of sorts to the local schools for musical instruments. And one of the big things about the story too was there was Jonas and the Massive Attraction, the lead singer, and our local celebrity Corey Daibo, who stepped on stage to give the students a great musical show. Of course, it was part and parcel to the announcement.
That's right.
But Carey Price, you know, coming into the school, it was unexpected. It was a secret even to the director of the education center in Kahnawake, Robin Dallaround, who said that she didn't even know that it was going to happen. She knew about Jonas, which had to be kept a secret, but she had no idea that Carey Price was coming in. So I'm assuming that it's because Eventco and the Montreal Canadiens are linked through business. So the schools' musical programs are going to be getting a boost.
That's really good, and I think
love him.
Yeah,
you know,
it's great. I think. Well, I'm not a Montreal Habs fan, but
you
go
must
Chicago.
leave.
But I think that Corey. Carey Price, I was going to talk about Corey Crawford, but Carey Price is an exceptional person, and I think what he does is great, you know, giving back to the community, and the fact that he comes to Kahnawake is incredible because, you know, he's playing Montreal, so he's right around the corner.
Right.
To come here is nice for the community, but it's a beautiful gesture, I think.
Yeah, and you know, the kids at Survival School were saying that they were shocked when he walked in, and one of the young girls that I spoke with, she was a grade 11 student, she was saying, you know, it was so awesome to see one of our favorite hockey players in our school talking about, you know, that experience of being a First Nations kid growing up in a small community and taking every opportunity that he had to get to where he was. And I said, so are you a Montreal Canadiens fan? She says, oddly enough, no, I'm a Boston Bruins fan, which I thought was great. But she was still in awe of it, and she still supported the fact that he was there and that he's Indigenous and he's done wonderful things in his life. So it was a small treat, or a big treat for the community, but also for all the students at Survival School. And I just kind of want to give a shout out to the administration of our local schools. They're doing a fantastic job. The Combined School Committee, they continue to work really hard. They're in a volunteer position, and you know, administration at Survival Schools doing a wonderful job. Often our schools get painted with such, you know, not always the nicest brush. We're not up to par, our standards aren't there, but you know, there's always something happening. We're unique. We take a different approach to our schools here in Kahnawake. So if you want that type of education and things like this, Carey Price walking through the door, because you just never know, I think it adds value, you know, to the school system.
Oh, yeah,
so
certainly.
That wasn't the only big story that happened here this week, yes, but in about a week or so ago, there was a big announcement made by Tammy Bova Designs that her creations were made themselves to the White House. Sorry, I'm stumbling here a little bit, but because I think it's such great news out of Kahnawake and for our Haudenosaunee communities that there are lots of great things happening.
Yep.
I ran into her at a broadcast actually of a CBC Daybreak. They were in the community. We reached out to them. I know the managing director, Sheila Kinch. Anyways, I stopped in to see them and they were broadcasting, and I ran into Tammy, and Joe Norton was sitting in the little area that they were broadcasting out of, talking about membership, of course.
That's right.
And you know, I said, hey, congratulations. I think it's so wonderful that you know, Justin Trudeau's wife and well, Justin Trudeau, they went to Washington.
That's
and
right.
They brought gifts for the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and part of those gifts were some of Tammy Bova Designs. And I just thought, wow.
Yeah,
you know,
great.
like her career has definitely taken off, but this is such an additive that,
That's right.
you know, it just goes to show that there's value, you know, there's value in that company.
People from outside are coming to Kahnawake to consume goods and services. That's very good.
Yeah. So great news, big news for happening in and around our communities. So I just think that, you know, we need to, you know, one of the things that we want to look at here on First Nations TV is reporting these things. And it's not to say, and we try to bring a good balance to the show, because it's not to say that there aren't things like tumultuous issues that are going on. And, you know, we are going to be discussing the news, not necessarily like a mainstream news program where we're reporting in front of the camera. You know, that may happen, that may not happen, but here it's really to have this discussion and talk about things that are going on.
Yeah, and I think perspective of Native and non-Native perspective combined gives a really good outlook on things and creates a balance in perception, which is required, I think, today.
Yes, it is. So we hope you enjoyed our program. Once again, our show is powered in part by Solution 4, Dr. Nguyen, Langto, The Rail, and we have another main sponsor that just came on to Castris.
Yes.
Yes, so we really would like to give a shout out to them and thank them for their support, and to you, the communities that support us, and our FirstNationsTV.com media and our broadcasting. So Nyawagoa, and thanks for tuning in. See you again real soon.
Ona.